Hello anime fan, welcome back to What If Animes 2.0. So in this video you gonna see, what if Sasuke sacrificed Naruto to awaken his true potential? This is part 1. And if you want more, then hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. So let's getting the video, and do check out the author of the story. Madara's soul was torn from his mortal shell and tossed into the waiting maw of the Shinigami. He would never be able to weave his schemes again. Ha 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 ha, it's not over, it'll never be over. He ranted as his soul was pulled deep inside of the Shinigami, a look of derangement filling his face as he was swallowed. Maybe now, a new world can be born. Naruto spoke with exhaustion, feeling tired from the ordeal. As the death god jerked his hand from Naruto's body, he pulled a soul that was not Naruto's, but that of Kyuubi and its chakra, a bargain by all rights. As the Shinigami faded, Naruto's body grew weak. The sudden loss of the infernal fox had taken its toll on him. The Shinigami fading away, his duty in this realm accomplished, he left without a word. Naruto stumbled, his body suddenly feeling much heavier. The first time in his life he felt truly depleted of chakra. He couldn't keep himself up any longer. As his legs gave out, he found himself being supported by none other than Karui. "Hold on, Blondie," she said as she looked at him with a newfound respect. She saw that he was a gambler and willing to do even the most dangerous things. "It isn't over, Naruto, it will never be over. Not so long as there is an Uchiha and a Senju," coldly Sasuke said as he stood to his feet, just as weak from his part of the fight. He was the one who held back Madara and kept him busy while Naruto summoned the Shinigami. "What the hell are you talking about?" Tsunade Baan was the last of the Senju. Naruto said in agitation. He was tired of the fighting. He was tired of this whole war between clans that were cousins. "Wrong. You are the last of the Senju. After all, you had a body that could contain the Kyuubi. Madara's goals are my goals. They are the goals of the Uchiha," he said as he pulled the Kusanagi blade from its scabbard and moved forward. Karui unsheathed her katana. She couldn't let Sasuke just have his way. Naruto was incapable of fighting as he was. She didn't like this behavior that was coming so suddenly in a time that should be about celebrating an end to a war. "I'm tired of this, Sasuke. It seems my words won't get through to you. Since you are so sure that the Senju are wrong in all of this, I'll stop you here," Naruto said as he tried to keep his eyes open. He wanted to sleep, he wanted to rest, but it looked as if one fight remained. As Sasuke staggered towards the blonde shinobi, the red-haired Kunoichi rushed forward. She stood in front of Naruto and turned to face Sasuke. She glared in disgust at him. She was unable to tolerate any more. Her eyes were welled with tears. She knew what had to be done. "Sasuke had to die. Do you want to die with him? I have no problem fulfilling that wish." Casually he spoke as he leveled his blade, ready to kill both in one blow. He wasn't moved in the least by Karen's look of sadness. He didn't need her anymore. He didn't need to kill anyone. Karen's eyes widened in horror as the dark-haired teen held his sword. She trembled in fear as she fearfully said, "Sasuke-kun, you're not serious, are you?" As the Uchiha smiled darkly and took a step back and readied his sword, Naruto had enough and took hold of Karui's sword. He lunged forward and swung the sword. He had reached the breaking point, and Sasuke was too far gone to save. He had to die. The twisted desires of one clan did not outweigh the rights of the world. Blow for blow, the strikes each dealt out were parried, but Naruto was running out of steam quickly. He couldn't maintain this intensity much longer, and when it looked hopeless, the katana Naruto wielded broke, the tip flying free, and struck Sasuke in the very eye he needed for Amaterasu. Arg! Sasuke screamed as searing pain filled his eye. He reached up and pulled the shard of metal from his eye. As he did such, he removed his eye completely. He stumbled back slowly, holding a hand over the right side of his face. He could keep going even with his injury. "You don't have enough energy left to fight me. Without the Kyuubi and its chakra you are weak," he shouted as if he were victorious. He shoved his sword to the ground. As he gripped his arm, forming the Chidori, ready to end it, "Naruto. Sasuke-kun, stop!" Sakura screamed desperately as she stood between the two, wanting to stop it. To her it was senseless. There was no need for Sasuke to repeat the same cycle that transpired time and time again. "Sakura-chan, get out of the way." He chose his path the moment he adopted Madara's beliefs as his own. Naruto spoke with a new harshness to his voice as he held his palm to the side and slowly formed his Rasengan. And in a sudden flash the two prideful shinobi rushed each other once more. It seemed as if time slowed as the two rushed headlong, crashing their respective spheres into one another. The two seemed to be at a stalemate, as the masses of chakra continued to push against each other. Suddenly, as it looked as if Naruto could gain the advantage, he was slashed across the chest. The Uchiha had produced a kunai and dealt a critical blow to his opponent. Naruto staggered back. Blood was freely pouring from his chest. He found the broken katana. He quickly rushed forward, not wasting a moment, and swung the sword diagonally across Sasuke's chest. "It didn't have to be like this, Sasuke," Naruto said with regret in his voice as he released his grip on the blade. Sasuke staggered back, a smug smirk on his face. "It isn't over yet, I'll destroy it all," he said cryptically as he staggered back towards the end of the cliff, clutching his chest as he jumped back and fell to his demise. Naruto rushed to the edge of the cliff and watched as his one-time friend vanished into the mist below. 5 years later, that day still replayed time and time again for Naruto, the day he was forced to do what he never wanted to do. They never found Sasuke's body after the incident. He was alive. If he was dead, they would have found the body. The blonde sat at the edge of his bed. The scar Sasuke had inflicted on him, it seared with tremendous pain. As if the rage of the last Uchiha was coursing through it. Like a curse from beyond the grave. He had changed much in the years since that fateful day. He changed emotionally. He had constantly distanced himself from others, the ones who loved him, the ones who cared about him, and those that respected him. He had become so aloof, so hard-hearted that he avoided bonds. He avoided creating bonds with people he didn't want to endanger anyone ever again. Physically, he had grown taller, more muscular, and on top of that he now sported a set of sleeve tattoos as well as one on his back. It was like a bodysuit, except the tattoos didn't spread onto his chest. He shifted his eyes to the window and sighed. "Another restless night," he quietly complained as he stood to his feet and walked to the bathroom to wash up. He pushed his hands through his longer hair, sighed yet again before washing his face, and staring at his reflection in the mirror. This legacy of the Rikudo Sennin has brought nothing but trouble. If only things went differently that day, he sorrowfully said as he turned and walked from the bathroom. He pulled on his black muscle shirt and black cargo pants, followed by his hooded fur coat, the black fur trim, the fire orange fabric, and black flames rising from the bottom of the coat. He tied his headband around his head and pulled the hood up. He walked to the door and put on his sandals and walked out the door. He sprung to the roof and bounded from roof to roof, heading straight for the Hokage Tower. He couldn't sit around any longer. He needed to get his mind on a mission. It was the only time he felt at ease anymore. As he landed softly at the entrance, "Naruto," came a calm voice. As the blonde turned, he saw it was Haruno Sakura. Her hair was longer, her Chinese-styled top had evolved, it was lower cut. Showed her belly a bit more. She still wore the skirt from her Chunin days, but now they were embroidered with her family symbol, the white circle. "What do you want, Sakura?" he coldly replied, as he looked over his shoulder before he walked to the door. "It isn't your fault." "None of it was," she exclaimed as she tried to get through to her friend. "Not my fault?" "It is my fault, I was weak, I didn't have resolve," he shouted in rage. He very much blamed himself, he could have done something else. She glared and grabbed him by the shoulders and forced him to the wall and said angrily, "Listen to me. You are not weak. You are weak now. You used to get strength by your bonds with others. What happened with Sasuke, it couldn't be helped. He was going to kill you. I'm not weak, I'm pushing others away to keep them safe. When I'm involved others get hurt, all because I'm descended of the Senju," he responded in an almost melancholy manner. He then gripped Sakura's wrists and forced her to release him. "I have to go. I have to meet the Hokage. What happened to Naruto? Who taught you this was the only way?" Inwardly the medical ninja asked. She didn't like the 180 and the blonde's personality. She watched as her friend walked into the Hokage Tower and shouted worriedly, "You have to be more careful. You will die if you aren't more careful. You aren't able to regenerate anymore." Naruto stopped and looked back at her with an emotionless gaze, almost like that of pain, dryly saying, "I don't care, I really don't." He then walked into the building and made his way to the upper floors. As he walked into the office, Hitaki Kakashi was sitting at the desk. He would be the Rokudame Hokage. Naruto's change in personality following his journey indicated he needed to grow more emotionally and wasn't ready for the job. Naruto, good of you to arrive. Dryly the Cage spoke from behind his desk as he looked at the blonde with a blank expression. Naruto noticed that Karen and Kiba were in the room as well. What's the mission, Kakashi-sensei? The blonde coldly asked, as he leaned against the doorway. Right, there have been some reports from around the world of graves being robbed, and people just disappearing. Kakashi explained as he looked at the blonde. He had seen the boy grow to be a capable Junin, but he often wondered at what cost. Kakashi set the scroll with the details on it on the desk, and continued calmly, the most recent incident was in the Land of Waves. Karen and Kiba will join you on this mission. You need to track down whoever is responsible. Also, the fourth member of your team will be joining you late. She had some duties to attend to this morning. You will be acting as squad leader. You should leave for this mission as soon as you are prepared, HMPH. Why the hell is he squad leader? He will just leave us behind and take care of everything on his own. Like last time, Kiba quickly complained as he stood to his feet in displeasure. HMPH, whatever, maybe if you stayed on your toes a little bit more I wouldn't have to handle everything, callously the blonde responded as he turned and walked from the door and decided to head back to his house. Kiba growled and rushed toward Naruto and grabbed him by the neck. I'm really sick of your callous attitude. We're to work as a team. So fucking what? You killed Sasuke. If you didn't act, he would have killed that redhead that seems to think you are so great, would have been killed. I know you better than that. You would have defended her regardless. The Inuzuka heir shouted as he glared hostilely at Naruto. Hinata had been walking to the floor when she saw the conflict between Naruto and Kiba, and rushed over and struck the precise pressure points of the two and disabled the two, making it so neither could move their arms. What has gotten into you two? She exclaimed, no longer stuttering when in the presence of Naruto. It was just another change from the war that had occurred. Hotshot here had to go and say he would rather work alone because he's still being a whiny bitch about killing Sasuke. Kiba explained as he shifted his gaze to Hinata. Hinata shook her head as she separated the two before she restored motion to their limbs. She had a feeling she would have to do this several more times during the mission. Don't talk like you understand, dog boy. It's more than killing Sasuke that has affected him. Try and think that there were factors that lead to this change. It isn't just Sasuke that made him become like this. Karen quickly berated the brown-haired shinobi, adjusting her glasses as she finished. She stood from her chair and walked to the blonde and took him by the arm, leading him to the stairway to the lower floor. I'm going with Naruto-kun. We'll meet you at the gates when it's time to depart. Maybe she'll give him some head and make him calm down, muttered the brown-haired shinobi as he watched the squad leader leave. Hinata looked at Kiba and said, Did you say something, Kiba-kun? She hadn't quite heard what her old teammate had said. Kiba froze. He didn't want Hinata to hear that. It was probably the worst choice of words. Unsure of how she felt about this new Naruto, he went for the save and said, Nothing. Just that Naruto needs to stop being so serious. Out in front of the building, Naruto jerked his arm away from Karen and looked coldly at her. He walked away slowly, not wanting to deal with her, as he tersely spoke, I'm not Sasuke, so stop clinging to me. You think I'm like that? That I would use you as a surrogate for him, really? She responded as she looked at him. She quickly walked in front of him and looked at him seriously. He just looked down at her with a sullen look. Aren't you? He callously said as he tried to walk past her. As the blonde pushed past her, she looked to the ground. She couldn't believe the change in the once kind-hearted shinobi. His chakra once so warm, it felt like spring all the time, it was now cold, cold with self-loathing. She momentarily bit her lip, shifting her gaze as she played with the hem of her skirt as she hesitantly said, You can use me. Naruto stopped in his tracks. He didn't understand where she was coming from with this comment that he could use her. You can use me, you know what I mean. She meekly said as she turned around to look at him. She would take his burdens if she had to. She knew this wasn't the true Naruto, just the result of what happened after reality chewed him up and spit him out. Whatever, he uncaringly said as he continued walking away. She grabbed his arm and looked at him with all the sincerity she had and said, Use me, take your frustrations out on me. No emotions, just use me if you need to. You're serious? His words sounded as if he was considering her offer, but he knew what it meant. She nodded her head. I'll take on his burdens, as long as he doesn't take it out on others anymore. This isn't him. I see the real him when I look into his eyes. She thought to herself as she looked sincerely at him as she said, You need to stop taking aggravation out on others. He looked at her emotionlessly and frostily said, "Fine, have it your way, let's just go." Moments later at his house, Naruto pushed Karen against the wall. She didn't resist him at all. He only looked at her and questioned, "Why aren't you resisting?" He shouted in agitation as he pressed her flush against the wall. "I said you could use me, that means you can have sex with me. I love you, I really do," she said as she looked tenderly at him, resting her hands on his shoulders. She slowly took her glasses off and set them onto a nearby table and proceeded to unbutton her top, pulling her top open. "Number regrets then," he said as he lifted her up and held her against the wall, hiking the skirt up above her hips. Slowly reaching down, he unzipped his pants, pulling his half-erect member out slowly. Karen without hesitation reached down and wrapped her delicate hand about his tool, stroking it softly to make sure he was completely ready. She clutched the sleeve of his coat, slowly scissoring her legs about his body. She looked at him with a kind look as she leaned towards his ear and whispered, "Take me," slowly pulling her hand away from his member to pull her panties to the side. Naruto didn't hesitate to fulfill her request. Placing the head of his member against her entrance, he slowly pressed against her until he was inside of her. As he did this, she wrapped her arms around him, her face become flush from the stimulation. He pulled himself firmly against her, his hips resting against hers before he slowly began rolling his hips. She bit her lip as she rolled her head before she brought her head back, burying it into the crook of his neck. "Naruto-kun," she hushed as she clung to him, rolling her hips to meet his. Her hand ran up back of his head, her fingers running along the fabric of his headband as she untied it and removed it, pulling it off of his head and dropped it onto the table. He grasped her hips as he pumped himself in and out of her, his breathing gradually growing heavier. He rested his forehead to hers as she pushed her fingers through his hair. He stared into her eyes, and as the excitement began to overtake him, he pressed his lips to hers, kissing her deeply. Parting from the kiss, she looked deep in his eyes. "Naruto-kun. Naruto-kun," she chanted his name, repeatedly closing her eyes as she pulled closer to him. She lowered one of her legs as he hooked his arm around the other. As she felt him start thrusting in and out of her harder, he slowly ran his right hand from her hip, moving it along her side before finally grabbing hold of one of her breasts. He softly fondled her as he moved in and out of her like a piston. Gradually he built up the intensity of his movements. Each time his hips hit hers, her body shook lightly. "Karen, you feel good," he groaned out as he pushed himself firmly into her, slowly hooking his fingers under her bra and lifted it up to free one of her breasts. Her face became more and more flush with excitement as she felt his hand lightly massaging one of her breasts. She began to roll her hips to his as she began to feel herself drawing closer to her climax. She wrapped her arms tightly around his shoulders and neck, pulling herself closer to him. "Naruto-kun, harder, I'm the one who's supposed to make you come, but you're making me come. You want more? Then here, you go, Karen," he whispered in her ear as moved his hands to her hips and pulled himself against her hips with a new fervor. His breath was becoming heavier and more labored as he built up speed, working himself to his peak. Naruto-kun, I'm NGHH. Naruto-kun, she screamed in ecstasy as she clamped down onto him and threw her head back in pleasure as her eyes rolled back from the pleasure, as waves of satisfaction crashed through her body. Karen, he hushed as he drew closer to coming and releasing his load into her. He slowed his hip thrusts, preparing to pull out. Karen snapped out of her tranquil daze and hooked both of her legs around him, pulling him deep inside of her. "Don't you dare pull out," she said as she began to ride him, working to make him release. He groaned as she pumped herself over his length and decided to not fight her on this time, and began moving her over his length. Karen, Karen, Karen," he shouted as he pushed her against the wall and himself deep inside of her. With each spasm of his cock, he filled her with his thick load. As he finished, he rested against her, catching his breath, slowly running his hand through her hair. She smiled affectionately at him, placing her hand over his before she slowly closed her eyes as she just enjoyed this tender moment. Slowly she lowered one of her legs, setting her foot to the floor. She leaned her head back as she felt him pulling out of her, a small moan escaping from her lips. Slowly stepping away from her, he put his tool away and zipped up his pants, a calmer look on his face. Slowly ran his index finger along her neck as he tilted her chin up and looked at her warmly for the first time in a long time as he said, "Thank you, Karen." Gently he pushed her bangs back and kissed her forehead. "Do you feel calmer?" she asked as she fixed her bra and slowly buttoned up her top. He nodded softly before he turned to go gather his gear. He walked away slowly saying calmly, "We better get ready to leave. Kiba and Hinata are probably waiting for us." "Right. Naruto-kun," she began as she placed her glasses gently on the bridge of her nose as she walked up behind him and tied his headband around his head as she spoke, finishing, "Be careful. I'm tired of watching you be so reckless. You need to listen to me. I've done this once. I don't want to be a tool anymore, whether you like it or not. You are not alone anymore." Naruto closed his eyes and quietly responded as he said, "You're not a tool, but I risk my life so no one ever dies again. But I will try. Let's go." He grabbed hold of his sword. As he turned around, she wrapped her arms around him. She buried her face into his chest, humbly saying, "Promise me, I'll be careful, Karen. I promise," he warmly said as he set his free hand on top of her head reassuringly. He knew deep inside, despite his best efforts, he couldn't keep her out. She was as tenacious as he was. She looked up at him and smiled softly as she replied, "Thank you." She slowly stopped her embrace of the blonde and walked to the door to wait for him. The two made their way out the front door, and quickly made their way to the gates of the village, so they could leave for their mission. As they arrived, Naruto quickly took note that Kiba and Hinata had changed into more suitable attire for the mission. Kiba wore a black sleeveless long coat which had a fur lining. The sleeves appeared to have been ripped off. A long-sleeved shirt was worn under the coat, bandage wraps around his wrists with fingerless gloves, and some camouflage cargo pants, with a set of hand axes at his sides. And naturally Akamaru was with him as well, as the two were inseparable. Hinata's wardrobe looked to be that of a more confident girl, wearing a violet hooded coat that came to her knees. The Hyuga clan symbol was embroidered on the back. Under the coat she was wearing a rather tight tank top, and lastly a pair of black cargo pants, with a holster for kunai and shuriken on each leg. "We will be commencing the mission now. If I tell any of you to get out of my way, do it. I don't want you to get hurt," spoke the blonde as he strode past the two and walked through the gates. He pulled the hood up over his head quietly. His laid-back expression soon changed. His eyes became more aggressive looking, more wild. Kiba sighed and held his hands up as he rolled his eyes. "And what will we be doing? You obviously don't have much need for us. I do have use for you. We may need to track whoever is responsible, and you three are perfect for this job. Karen is a sensor, Hinata has a Byakugan, you and Akamaru can track by scent. Beyond that, if it comes down to it, we need to have the ability to fight back. Kiba, you are capable of fighting with taijutsu and some ninjutsu, we may need it." Unflinchingly the blue-eyed Junin explained, as he turned his head back saying, "I'll take lead. Kiba, you bring up the rear. Karen and Hinata aren't close quarters experts, so it is our job to handle any attackers that get too close." "Understood, Naruto-kun," Hinata responded. She answered respectfully, though she had some apprehension about working with him. She hadn't worked along with him since the war had ended. She had done her best to distance herself from him since he had become more serious. "Fine, you're the leader," grumbled the Inuzuka as he crossed his arms. He eyed the redhead suspiciously. Since Naruto wasn't biting his head off yet, he wondered what she did. Naruto began walking slowly and coldly said, "Let's get going. We have a lot of ground to cover." His voice sounded more distorted from behind the mask, like that of a demon. The three other Junin quickly followed the orange-clad shinobi, knowing well he would go on without them. As the group traveled, they eventually switched to travel utilizing the treetops to move towards their destination. As they traveled, Naruto's eyes widened for a moment as he saw a figure for a moment that looked remarkably like Tayuya of the Sound 4, only older. He pushed the thought to the back of his head. He figured he was imagining things. As time went on, he swore he saw more members of the Sound 4. He forced the thoughts back. It wasn't like these people could have been brought back. There was no way, it was impossible. Eventually they reached the Great Naruto Bridge, but before they began to cross it, Naruto stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes turned to the empty grave that was near the bridge, the one that belonged to Haku. It took them long enough to notice shinobi missing from their graves, not to mention people just vanishing in the areas I took the bodies from. Came a familiar voice full of smugness. From above, the squad quickly looked above, noticing a figure with one eye covered. The trademark bangs, hair sticking up on the sides, one Sharingan active. Uchiha Sasuke was alive and well. Clad in a near-identical version of his attire from their last confrontation, The shirt now had long sleeves, and was now black. The obi belt was now a crimson red, with the every familiar kusanagi blade resting at his hip. And for them to send you make it ever more worthy it. Ah, did you really think you were capable of killing me? You were merely lucky, the rogue ninja said with smugness to his voice as he suddenly vanished and appeared at the center of the group. He turned his head, his crimson eye focusing on Karen. You think you can kill me, is that it? Naruto responded calmly until he gripped the handle of his sword and jerked the sword free from the scabbard, revealing a branch sword, which bore 8 bladed prongs, as opposed to the normal 6. He rushed forward, pulling the blade back, ready to cut the depraved shinobi down. Hey, so quick to anger, that's just like you. Or is it? The redeemer of fallen shinobi has a chink in his armor, heartlessly the Uchiha replied as he unsheathed his blade and blocked the strike of the sword. He put some pressure against the pronged blade and shoved it away effortlessly. A smug look on his face as he hopped back, shouldering the blade, speaking with arrogance. You're just a shadow of your former self. You can't beat me, is that so? The blonde said in a cool-headed manner. As rolled his shoulders and slipped his arms out of his coat, allowing the heavy coat to fall to the ground lightly. The numerous tattoos covering his arms were in plain view. He smirked as a wild look filled his eyes. He ran his thumb over his sword, nicking his thumb before he ran it along one of the tattoos, summoning forth a snake, which coiled about his arm before regurgitating a sword eerily comparable to the sword of Kusanagi of Orochimaru. Naruto took the sword from the snake, allowing it to retreat back into his arm to resume being a tattoo of an Ouroboros. The tattooed shinobi held the blades out and lunged forward, slashing and thrusting the blades forward, rolling the hilts off his fingers, exchanging them from hand to hand. Hinata's eyes widened as she watched the fluent motions of the blades. Was this the power Naruto now wielded? Kenjutsu comparable to gentle fist, summoning from tattoos. Who did Naruto gain this power from? It was frightening. Naruto-kun, be careful, it's a trap. I sense more chakra signatures in the area. Karen shouted as she felt an eerily familiar chakra in the area. Not just one but more, but they were keeping hidden. Not today, Dobi. To Yuya now, shouted the raven-haired shinobi as he had enough of defending attacks from someone he felt was beneath him. As he commanded, an entrancing melody from a flute rang out through the area, causing the 4 shinobi to feel as if they were bound by chains. The redhead soon revealed herself. Her hair was in a braid that came to mid-back, wearing a black jacket with red embroidery of a music note on each shoulder. A gray tank top with a mesh material around the neck, the otogakure hite tied about her waist, and black jeans. As it turns out, Karen was right for once. I had a trap set for you. You think you've done enough to contend with me? Hardly. You are still pitifully weak. There is a reason why I exposed myself, so I can let you know, I'm going to destroy the ninja world you're so fond of. I perfected Edo Tensei. No, I made a true Edo Tensei. 3 lives for the restoration of 1. A fair trade. Sasuke explained as he ripped off the cloth that covered his other eye, revealing he had a Byakugan implanted. He scowled at Naruto and held his sword to the orange-clad ninja's neck. When Hinata saw the Byakugan, she was mortified. It meant that a member of her clan was killed in battle, and only for the purpose of the eye. You're a monster, Sasuke. Who did you kill for that eye? She screamed in rage, tears filling her eyes. She had heard a member of the clan went missing, and this was the result. It could end that easily. But, I want to destroy the world you helped create. I want you to suffer, rasped the Uchiha as he sheathed his blade, and quickly kicked Naruto in the gut. He then shifted his cold gaze at Hinata and smiled deviously. Shut up. You Hyuga have been coddled and treated like something sacred. For too long. You are just another group of shinobi with an inferior Kekkei Genkei. I only use this rubbish dojutsu until I can get my hands on a ninja with good enough surgical skills to implant my brother's eyes. You son of a bitch. You're so fixated on avenging the wrongs that befell the Uchiha that you would violate the laws of nature. Naruto snarled out as he tried to fight the genjutsu and get free so he could kill the twisted man who stood in front of him. Violating. No, you misunderstand. I will rewrite those laws. As for why I'm doing it, that's simple. I want you to be broken before I kill you. I want you lose everything to those you wished you could save. Seethed the dark-clad ninja as he then looked at the bespectacled Kunoichi, who was looking at him with disgust as he sniffed the air about her lightly, saying dryly and impersonally, "So you've gone from clinging to the arm of the rightful heir of the Rikudo Sennin's legacy, to sleeping with the usurper. I can smell it on you." Karen scowled and spit in the crimson-eyed male's face and said with disgust, "Usurper? I know I'm sleeping with a real man, which you must know about after all. You like the feel of your own sword up your ass." As she said this, the Uchiha struck her across the face. He glared angrily as he tried to resist activating his Mangekyo Sharingan. He grit his teeth and looked at her contemptuously. "To you keep them here long enough for me to gather the people for the sacrifice. Time to add an impenetrable defense to my army." He impersonally ordered the redhead, as he walked past Naruto, stopping and saying with spite in his voice, "Oh, here I got something for you." As he said that, he pulled his katana from the scabbard and slashed the blonde downward through the chest. Not cutting deep enough to injure him, but enough to leave another scar. "Now we're even. One for my eye and another for running me through," coldly the dark-haired shinobi said as he strode off before taking to the trees. "Naruto, tell me you have a plan," spoke the feral Inuzuka as he shifted his gaze to Naruto, hoping the infamous Uzumaki Naruto had a plan. He saw the blank expression on Naruto's face. Had he finally cracked under the pressure? "You won't be getting out of this until I decide." Well, little Karen turned out to be a whore. "Just so you know, I always fucking hated you. Orochimaru-sama always treated you like you were some precious child," Tayuya stated with agitation as she put the flute away. Stepping up to Karen, she grabbed the redhead by the hair and threw her to the ground. She proceeded to stomp on her repeatedly, placing her foot on Karen's neck. Tayuya ground her foot against the younger Kunoichi's neck before stepping back and kicking her hard in the ribs, smirking with a sadistic enjoyment of it. "Leave her alone." Naruto growled as he looked at the foul-mouthed Kunoichi trying to break free from the hold of the genjutsu. "Oh, shut the fuck up. Wait, I remember you. You helped that piece of shit who killed me." Tayuya responded as she walked over to the blonde. She punched him in the stomach, glaring hatefully at him. As he doubled over, the Kunoichi brought her knee to his stomach for another blow as she said with sickening delight, "If only I could kill you." But he made it clear, he gets to kill you, Naruto-kun. "Break the genjutsu. If you don't do something," Hinata exclaimed as she looked at him with worry when suddenly she felt a spike in his chakra. She activated the Byakugan and she saw the expansion of chakra flowing through him. "Is it Sage Mode?" she thought to herself as she watched. "I know," coolly Naruto spoke as he released his swords and grabbed Tayuya by the wrist, having broken free of the genjutsu that paralyzed him. He twisted her arm into a modified arm bar, shaking his finger at her with his other hand. "The fuck?" was all the lone female from the Sound 4 could say as she was suddenly whipped right into a nearby tree. Before she could react, a knee struck her right on the side of the head as Naruto performed a running knee strike. "I doubt she would feel too talkative right now," he quipped as he backed off and caught the redhead as her unconscious body fell over. "How long were you waiting to play that card? Shouldn't you have had that ready to go before Sasuke showed up?" complained Kiba as he looked at Naruto questioningly. "He needs to think I'm weak, chain her up. Let's see if Ino can convince her to talk. We need to find out where Sasuke is holed up," he nonchalantly said as he tossed the unconscious young woman to the ground. Akamaru sniffed the young woman curiously as Kiba pulled out a chain to bind her up properly. "Do you really think she knows much about him?" asked the brown-haired male as he lifted the Kunoichi to his shoulders. Naruto walked over to Karen and helped her to her feet, his eyes fading back to normal. "Hard to tell. He probably thinks by bringing them back you will have their unending loyalty," he said as he pulled Karen to her feet. "Naruto-kun, we should bandage you up first," Hinata pleaded with him, worried that he was going to bleed to death before they got back. He pulled the shirt up, showing the wound was shallow, leaving only a thin scar. He reassuringly said, "I'm fine, now let's get going." Slowly he picked up his coat and donned it once more before he picked up his weapons. Slowly he slid the branch sword into the scabbard. Slowly he ran his left thumb over a small seal on the summoned long sword, allowing it to return to home, in the belly of the snake. "Hey, aren't you going to make sure Tazuna and his family are alright? And what about stopping him from sacrificing the people he's gathering?" Kiba interjected since he had heard Naruto's first major mission was across the bridge. "Tazuna, Inari, and Tsunami have been dead for 3 years, And it's already too late to stop him from bringing back Haku. He isn't so sloppy as to tell us what he's about to do, he just wants us to waste our time," responded Naruto as he kept walking forward, revealing it hadn't just been what happened with Sasuke that caused his shift in personality. The brown-haired shinobi decided to ask, "Did Sasuke kill them?" He had to know the truth. The blonde stopped and looked back and gave a nod before turning and walking forward. "I said let's go, we have a lot of ground to cover. She should be out for a short while, no telling how long until she wakes up," Naruto said as he walked down the road. He clenched his right fist in agitation. He would have to do something, otherwise the people who died would have died in vain. What was the point really? He forfeited the Kyuubi to the death god, losing a mass of his strength to stop Madara. Only for Sasuke to turn around and want to kill him. It was as if he wouldn't try and form a lasting peace. He couldn't forgive Sasuke for all the sins he committed. He would have to die. "I'll kill that son of a bitch. I'm sorry, Ero Sennin, but sometimes you can't forgive people. And sometimes they're just too far gone. A world where people can understand each other has to wait. This is still a world where old hatreds refuse to die," thought the young man to himself as he walked quietly, shifting his gaze to the red-haired kunoichi who was following him. "Are you alright, Karen?" he asked her in concern, since she had been beaten worse than any of them. "Naruto-kun, don't worry about me. I'm fine," she responded as she rubbed her ribcage, putting on her best tough face. She was hurting some, but it wasn't anything serious. Years of abuse, years of being beaten, years of being bitten into, she had gotten used to pain. It didn't faze her anymore as the group traveled. Hinata stared at Karen. Could Sasuke have been right? Or they, she thought to herself. She couldn't help but wonder if the rogue ninja was telling the truth. She relinquished her fondness of Naruto the moment he began changing. He started to scare her. He was just so full of hatred when he thought he killed Sasuke. Then people from around the continent started dying. People he had helped. She saw it changed him. It scared her when he started acting more aggressive. That wasn't the Naruto she knew anymore. The group would eventually reach Konoha. Naruto pulled the hood of his coat down and turned, picking up the unconscious female and resting her over his shoulder. "I will go drop her off and report to the Hokage. Karen, you go to the medical corp. Kiba, Hinata, thank you for your assistance. Sorry it was a waste of your time," spoke the Junin as he looked to the others. Kiba looked rather shocked that Naruto actually thanked them. "You thanked me?" the Inuzuka heir asked in shock. "It was really out there for that to happen." "Yeah. You got a problem with it?" Naruto responded as he removed his mask, looking at the dog using shinobi coldly. The Inuzuka's eye twitched as he stepped forward and poked the blonde Junin in the chest, saying, "Yeah, you never thank anyone. Whatever. I was told I need to stop criticizing those I work with. But poke me again, and I will put that finger in a very uncomfortable place," the former Jinchuriki said as he looked at Kiba with a vicious look, a look that said he would do something unspeakable to the brunette if he continued to agitate him. When Kiba stepped back and raised his hands in surrender, Naruto turned and walked down the street in silence. "Faye, whatever, the guy is still a total jackass. Come on Akamaru, let's go home," Kiba complained as he put his hands behind his head, Akamaru barking at the black-clad Junin following him as the two went home. At least at home he would only be bossed around by family. As Naruto and Kiba both left, Hinata turned to look at Karen, who had been leaving for the medical corp to get examined. "Is it true? Are you and Naruto-kun sleeping together?" quietly the Hyuga heiress asked. It bothered her to say the least. Naruto never let anyone in. After a mission that had gone wrong, Naruto stopped letting others in. He blamed himself. It was the fact that as a leader, he had gotten Choji killed, Shikamaru severely injured, and Lee had nearly been killed. After the incident, Naruto left for a year to train to become stronger. She was at first happy to see he returned to the village, but slowly she heard he had become more aggressive. He had changed to that of a more aggressive shinobi. It scared her. Karen stopped and looked back at Hinata. It had to be brought up, saying with annoyance, "Do we have to talk about this now?" "Yes, because Naruto-kun doesn't let anyone in. He stopped doing that 2 years ago," responded the dark-haired girl as she looked at the redhead wanting answers. The bespectacled kunoichi clenched her fists and looked at the ground for a moment, and said with resolution, "You heard what I said back there. I do it for him. There is no emotion to it. I'm letting him use me. His burden frustrates him. So I will gladly let him use me." Hinata's eyes widened with shock. She heard the explanation Karen was letting Naruto use her. Why do you do it? Because I love him. I don't love him for how he is now, but for who he is deep down inside. I have hopes that it will one day return. The Naruto that would never give up, that had a reason to keep fighting. But until then, I'm the only one who can do it. I know you loved him at one time. But you're a nice girl, you don't have it in you to do this. Karen explained, revealing her reasons weren't all too selfish, it was all for Naruto. If she could help relieve the stress he had, she would do it. Now if you don't mind, I better go to the medical corp. I'm starting to feel a little bit sore from being stomped on, she said as she began to walk towards the medical corp, like she was told to do, rubbing her side as she felt the bruises starting to form. Naruto walked down the street and walked to a bunker that was the new Anbu headquarters. He walked through the door and walked through, reaching the interrogation section of Anbu. He quickly tossed Yuya to the floor. How would you like to interrogate a girl who should be dead? He asked as he looked to Ino, who was sitting at her desk. Ino's appearance changed in 3 years. She was curvier for one thing, but she had matured as well. Her hair was no longer in a ponytail. Her long hair cascaded over her shoulders and down her back. She wore a shirt jacket that came off at her midsection, a belly-bearing top which bore floral embroidery, which had a sheer violet material that covered her belly. She wore her leaf headband about her waist like a belt, accentuating her purple skirt, fish net about her thighs with a knife strapped to her right thigh. She looked at Naruto and shook her head. You never just come to see me. Wait, what do you mean should be dead? She looks alive to me, she said with some puzzlement in her voice as she looked to the unconscious girl. This is Yuya of the Sound 4. That bastard Sasuke is alive. And he used a kinjutsu to bring her back from the grave. I know she's dead because Shikamaru and Tamari killed her, 6 years ago. He explained as he knelt down and formed a hand seal, placing his index and middle fingers to the female's head, using a mild medical ninjutsu to wake her from unconsciousness. You will tell us what you know about Sasuke. He nonchalantly said as he gripped one of the chains that bound Yuya, and lifted her to her feet. Faye, whatever, like I'm gonna tell a limp-dicked bastard anything. She vulgarly responded as she glared at Naruto. Ino stepped over with a menacing look to her cornflower blue eyes, as she sweetly said, oh, you better hope I find out what we need to know. Because Naruto has been known to get the information we seek and his methods are less friendly than the standard practices of the interrogation unit. Naruto looked to Ino and nodded his head. I'm going to report to the Hokage, find out what you can. He told the platinum blonde Kunoichi as he turned to leave. He walked out the door, leaving Ino to do what she does best. Ino watched as Naruto walked out of the room. She then looked almost too pleased to have the former member of the Sound 4 in her department. Oh, I imagine your mind has plenty of secrets we can look through. She chimed as she put her index finger against Yuya's forehead, looking at her with viciousness. Lock her up. I'll begin the process tomorrow. She ordered a nearby chunin, as she looked at the Otogakure Kunoichi with a look that could make even Ibiki cringe. Several minutes later, Naruto was at the Hokage Tower. Shikamaru was there waiting for him. He leaned against his crutch. After the failed mission a few years back, he needed a cane to walk. Naruto, we have to talk about the mission, he dryly said as he looked at the brutal shinobi. What's there to talk about? I was in charge, I fucked up. Choji died because I wasn't prepared. You ended up crippled, and Lee almost died. End of story. The orange-clad blonde responded with displeasure. He hated to remember the mission where he screwed up. He shook his head and looked seriously at the blonde and said sternly, we were in over our heads. We didn't know that Nuke Nin was that deadly. It wasn't just you. When you stop blaming yourself for others dying, you can move on. Shinobi die, we had to get used to it. It was my fault. I was team leader, and I don't want to get used to it, especially when there was something I could have done. Responded the blonde as he walked past the chunin and entered the building. Shikamaru hung his head aside in agitation, saying, you have to let go of the past. You were able to forgive pain, but it seems when you are to blame you can't forgive yourself. Naruto walked through the building, making his way to the top floor. He stepped towards the office, and pulled the doors open. Naruto, what do you have to report? Kakashi spoke as he looked up from a scroll, hoping that the problem was dealt with. Uchiha Sasuke is alive, replied the blonde as he took a seat across from the Hokage. I was afraid of such. We never found the body. Give me the details, Naruto. Responded the one-eyed Kage. We encountered him near the Great Naruto Bridge. Haku's grave was empty. He wanted to destroy the entire ninja world. He also said he's looking to get his hands on the surgeon so he can implant Itachi's eyes. Naruto began as he gripped the arms of the chair, gritting his teeth in frustration as he continued saying in a voice filled with rage, "He's using Kinjutsu, some perfected form of Edo Tensei. We brought back one of the resurrected, Tayuya of the Sound 4. I took her to the interrogation division of Enbu to find out what we can about Sasuke." Kakashi held his head in his hands, sighing softly as he said in response, "This isn't good. If Sasuke has revived Tayuya, he must have revived the rest of the Sound 4 as well as Kagaya Kimimaro. What do we do?" asked the blonde as he stared quietly at his former teacher. He didn't really have an idea of what to do. "We wait until we have information from the detainee you captured. We can't act until we know what we're up against," responded Kakashi as he looked at his student, as he continued with, "Go home and relax if you can. As of now you are on vacation." Naruto's lips curled into a look of displeasure, as he stood to his feet and slammed his hands on the desk. "I can't do that. I'm the only capable shinobi that should be sent out," he complained as he looked at the Hokage with irritation. "Not a request. Go home. When something comes up that only you can do, we will call for you. You are not the only ninja in Konoha," he responded as he looked sternly at the blonde. Naruto turned and walked to the door, responded with agitation to his voice as he said, "Fine." Hours later, night had come. Naruto was sitting quietly in the middle of his living room. His shirt was removed as he ran his fingers over the scars on his chest. As he thought about Haku being brought back from the grave, the thought of someone as caring as Haku being used as a tool by Sasuke began to infuriate him. He snapped out of his daze when Karen knelt behind him and wrapped her arms around him. Whether he liked it or not, he had let her in. He found out during the course of the day during the encounter with Sasuke. He had a fondness for Karen and there was no helping it. "It's going to be okay, Naruto-kun," she whispered as she rested her head against his back. She wanted to support him, but it was harder said than done. She knew it was a catalyst that would affect him. She feared he would become more distant than he already was. He slowly put his hand over hers as he looked down, quietly saying, "You know it's going to be dangerous for you to associate with me, right?" She lifted her head, smiled softly as she shook her head. She brought her lips closer to his ear and whispered, "I don't care. Sasuke would kill me anyway because I betrayed him years ago." "Have it your way," he tranquilly replied as he shifted his gaze to the side and looked at her, a faint smile on his face. He didn't want to fight her on it. Not tonight at least. He was tired of fighting for one day. He then spoke softly as he was looking at her, "I was told to try and relax. Think you can help me?" "I believe I can," she coyly replied as she looked at him affectionately before nuzzling his shoulder quietly. Thanks for watching, guys.